Traders, how are you? Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today, we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Lots going on, record highs, earthquakes in Indonesia, volcanoes going off in the Caribbean, all kinds of things going on. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to change the format a little bit because I think some of the technical numbers and things like that I don't really think is really important. So I'm going to go ahead and give you kind of just the overall view of what the market is doing, maybe some of the stocks as well. If you're watching on video, you'll see them here on the right, kind of all listed so you can see them. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll just give you kind of a general overall view of what direction the market's going. So that way I can delve into a little bit more of topics that I think will be really good for you guys to learn. You know, things like the how the interest rates affect the economy and the middle class. I read a great article this week about how the quarantines are literally destroying the middle class. There's about 134 million people in the United States, in North America, that have been knocked out of the middle class. And the middle class is really what generates a lot of wealth. It's really what kind of powers the economy. In the US, 50% of all the jobs were in the middle class. So I kind of want to go over those little things, and I plan on doing a video on that. So let me know if you guys want to see that video about the middle class. Don't forget to smash the like button. As some people say, it helps a lot with the algorithm. And if you guys have any questions, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment there with hashtag Ask Marcello. I'll be happy to go ahead. I got a little extra time now, so we're going to start doing a little bit more of those Ask Marcello questions. Overall, Bank of America is reporting, according to them, that equity funds have attracted over $500 billion in the last 5 months. This is exceeding all the flows and recorded over the last 12 years. This is kind of the old saying. I don't believe that it was Warren Buffett that actually talked about when you go to get the shoe shiner, and the shoe shiner is the one that's giving you actually stock tips. When there's this euphoria, this melt up in the markets, it's where that old saying that Warren Buffett always says, be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. Right now, we're in the greedy stage, so be fearful. A lot of people are talking about obviously the crash. I recorded a video this week as well, which should go out this week, about why Bill Gates is selling all the stocks. On top of that, we have central banks. I'm going to share with you right now these central banks that are continuing to buy more and more gold. So why, I always tell you guys, don't pay attention to what people say, because the majority of the mainstream news doesn't report the actual news. Pay attention to what they do. So for example, why is Bill Gates the biggest owner of farmland now in the United States? Why is he selling all his stocks? Why are we having a record amount of money coming into the equity funds, right? You see what I mean? So we're not heading in a good direction, short term or long term. Now, forward earnings on the S&P 500 are at 22 times earnings. There's a lot of people now that are worrying about we're going to get a correction. I'm expecting it probably in May or June sometime. It's hard to kind of identify an exact point because obviously we have the situation where the central banks have that ultra easy monetary policy, all the stimulus as well. One of the things I kind of am noticing being here in the United States, there are hiring signs everywhere. We're hiring everywhere from the mall to Wendy's, every kind of, everywhere I drive, because you can't find work. You can't find workers right now due to the fact that people are getting so much money with stimulus that they'd rather sit home for $300 to $400 a week rather than go out and work for $500 a week, because it works out better for them to just sit at home and get stimulus. Again, not good for the middle class. So overall, the markets were higher this week. The Dow and the S&P reached the record high on Monday, in addition to Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, Facebook, and Microsoft as well. Minimal kind of rise, 2-3% in the United States. Overseas market news, the Euro stocks are mostly flat, but they do have the longest weekly winning streak since November 2019. So even international markets are very bullish, kind of overly bullish, right? We have a situation as well where the Latin American, Canadian markets a lot higher as well. Canada up 1.10%. Africa and the Middle East usually always divided. The biggest loser being Egypt at about 2.53%. Saudi Arabia positive 1.17%. And then Asia and Australia, they were mixed for the week. Australia in some big trouble in terms of their debt. They went up 2.43%. Thailand negative 1.91%. And let me know, it's a lot easier to kind of summarize that information that way. So let me know how you guys like that new format. You should see all the numbers there on it should be the right hand of your screen, right? the way that I used to do them before. So I kind of just give you the overall sentiment, and then if we have a crash or a real, big melt up, for example, I'll give you guys the exact percentages. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency news. PayPal co-founder and billionaire Peter Thiel is warning that Bitcoin could actually be a Chinese financial weapon that's going to be used to take down the U.S. monetary and global reserve status. So that's actually pretty interesting. Now remember that Peter Thiel's foundation was one of the ones with a key creation to Ethereum as well. So, just kind of keep that in mind. Other than that, for the week, Bitcoin is lower 0.70%, just over $58,405. Commodities, oil has went down by the most in nearly 2 weeks on Monday. It has to do with the delay of the businesses opening in Europe, especially in the Italy and the UK, along with growing Iranian crude exports. We had a situation this week as well where the Biden administration was sitting down with the Iran counterpart. The negotiators sat down for the first time since 2018 when Trump pulled out of the nuclear deal. So now they're kind of sitting down and talking about them and being included again in a nuclear deal now that the Biden administration is kind of moving forward with that. Crude for the week, U.S. crude is down 3.52% at $59.36. International Brent is down 2.85% at $63.06. Gold rose again with the USD weakening after the Fed, which is the central bank in the United States, indicated that it was not going to tighten monetary policy. It's going to continue to go ahead and print money and inject money into the economy. This is part of the reason, remember, why we're seeing everything go up. House values are exploding. The stocks are continuing to make record highs because when they inject that money, the majority of us feel rich, right? Why? Because our 401ks are, reaching record highs and is hundreds of thousands of dollars higher. The home that we bought continues to go up and up and up and up and up, and we refinance and pull out 20, 30,000. So that feeling of richness, even though it's on paper, then what we do is we go out and we spend money. And when we spend money, nearly 70%, two-thirds, last time I checked the exact number, it was nearly 70% of the U.S. economy's consumer spending. So that's precisely why they do that. Global central banks are starting to buy gold again. India is the leader. They took on 11.2 tons of gold. Hungary also doubled their holdings to 94.5 tons. Polish central bank looking to buy at least 100 tons of gold, and Serbia is continuing to make purchases since 2019. Overall for the week, gold was up 0.80%. It went to $1,745, while silver was up 1.35% to $25.36. Financial and banking news, the Archegos capital situation is starting to reverberate through the economy. The second largest bank in Switzerland, called Credit Suisse, took a $4.7 billion loss. That's about 4.4 billion Swiss francs. They dumped over $2 billion worth of stock due to the situation of the failure of the Archegos capital management. They're going to overhaul now their leadership in the investment bank and the risk division, and they're expecting to lose about $900 million in quarter one, cutting their dividend by 2/3 and also canceling buyback plans. So that failure, remember in 1999, part of the reason why we have that .com bust is because there was a fund called Long-Term Capital Management that actually failed. And then Wall Street, being a bunch of other funds and banks, actually bailed out that fund. So could this be kind of a financial crisis 2.0? U.S. production prices are increasing by more than expected in March. There's an index called the PPI, which is the Purchasing Power Index. It went up 1% as costs are increasing across the board. Largest annual gain in 9.5 years. 4.2% increase in year-over-year prices. And in addition to that, the $2.3 trillion infrastructure plan from Biden, and I'm getting a notification that the battery's going to run out here. So if it cuts off in a second, we'll just jump right back in when it cuts off. The infrastructure package that he's thinking about passing, which includes the biggest tax hikes in quite a bit of history in the United States, may actually help overseas markets more than it does the U.S. markets, due to the fact that corporations are going to leave their money overseas instead of repatriating it back to the U.S. and investing in the U.S. And it's actually considering, a lot of analysts are saying that it's actually going to help other countries, especially Chinese equities, for example, rather than U.S. The pandemic damage for the global financial system. Australia, they're not in big trouble, but they're starting to be. Their federal debt has gone up from 47.5 65% of GDP to 77% of GDP. They went up by 1.3 trillion in 3 years. And remember, that magic number for a lot of countries when it comes to debt is the 100% level. So at the rate that the US, for example, is already at 100. The crisis that Iceland and more like places like Spain and Greece and Ireland had years ago, debt is not a good thing. And right now, I think they're doing it on purpose, because the situation, the world collapse needs to be so bad. That's when they're going to come in with the government coin, and they got to put in the new financial system where you're not going to have any privacy anymore. New York State is planning to increase their taxes on the most affluent residents. The overall tax rate from the state, local, and federal tax level is going to be 52%, meaning that in New York, if you make a lot of money, most affluent, meaning millions of dollars most likely, with all the taxes including, they're more likely going to pay out more than they actually receive. And so now a lot of analysts are saying that this is actually going to backfire, because New York is already in trouble with people leaving to freedom states, for example, like New York, Texas, and also Florida, which don't have things like mask mandates or quarantines anymore. The New York State budget is $212 billion, which includes a lot more aids for schools, tenants, and small businesses. In addition to that, there's a lot of progressive items in there, in addition to money for renewable energy and nonprofit arts. They're also going to give a lot of money to immigrants in New York as well. They already have the second highest unemployment rate, which is 8.9% in February, second highest among the 50 states and DC. Higher taxes only going to drive more people away. In trade news, the U.S. Commerce Department is stating that 7 Chinese supercomputing entities in the U.S. Are going to be listed in the economic blacklist because they're working for the military in China. The technology obviously is vital for development in a lot of modern weapons and also national security threats, including hypersonic missiles. So they're going to go ahead and put them on the blacklist. In technology, Elon Musk, I don't know, you guys probably saw this, but he actually shared a video of a monkey playing video games with its mind using a brain chip. Another one of Elon Musk's companies called Neuralink actually placed the chip inside of the monkey's brain. And the idea behind this is he wants to be able to help people that have, problems with their brain, like paralysis and epilepsy and all these other kind of diseases, where the chip will allow you to be able to live a mostly normal life. You can even connect to a computer via Bluetooth, for example, and to be able to control it all with your mind. The guy's amazing, isn't he? In investment news, Air France and KLM are going to receive a bailout. The French government now is going to be the biggest shareholder. 30% they're going to own of the company after investing 4 billion euros, which is close to about $5 billion. BitDance, which is a huge Chinese technology company, is having its hand slapped in India. They froze the accounts there, and they lost a lawsuit to be able to unblock their funds down there. They're accused of laundering or trying to evade, let's say, $11 million worth of taxes. Vacancy rates in U.S. malls are reaching a record of about 11.4% in Q1 compared to 10.5% in Q4, surpassing the previous spike seen in Q1 in 2009. And obviously the pandemic is only exacerbating that situation as well. It's really just speeding up what was going to happen anyway, right? Because who goes to the mall anymore? Chinese retail sales of passenger cars increased by 69% to just over 5 million vehicles in Q1. It's returning to the pre-pandemic levels. If you see as well what's going on in China, they're literally having parties. If you guys look at what's happening in Texas and Florida, Texas just had a baseball game, 25,000 in a stadium, no mask mandate, nobody's dying. Florida at the end of this month in April is supposed to host the MMA, which is 15,000 people, no limits, no mask, no nothing. So hopefully with the vaccines as well, we can get back to normal. In international events, the coronavirus deaths have actually crossed the 3 million mark on Tuesday. Amazing how we didn't have any flu deaths last year, however, which is great. The latest worldwide resurgence of COVID-19 infections is causing problems to be able to get people vaccinated, especially in Brazil and India. The US still has the highest number of deaths in the world at about 555,000, and the Euro region with 51 countries has the highest number of reported deaths at 1.1 million. I mentioned to you guys about Iran, how they're going back to the nuclear deal. Russia is experiencing protests again after the situation in Navalny. If you guys remember, the billionaire that was transferred to Germany over a supposed poisoning. He's been transferred to a non-disclosed location, and he's currently serving a 2.5-year jail term, and supposedly he is being treated in a very negative way for going against Putin. And unusual facts, according to a new survey, 53% of Canadians are on the verge of insolvency or are $200 away from not being able to pay their monthly bills and obligations, while a full 25% took on more debt during the pandemic. They have some of the strictest lockdowns in the world. I've talked to some of my friends out there in Canada. They're not doing too well in terms of that. And one of the really interesting things this week, in Inner Mongolia, the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region in China had developed a way to be able to make essentially the sand in the desert grow food and grow plants. They take a paste that they found from inside the cell walls of the plants, they put it in the sand, and then they start taking care of it, and it continues to grow. They're currently growing things like corn, tomatoes, and sunflowers. 200 hectares in sand dunes in 6 months where they were able to grow food. They want to be able to reforest 50% of the degraded desert land in 3 years, and by 2030 continue to go ahead and span all the deserts with forest. Alaska, in environmental news, had record low temperatures today, the 10th of April. In spring, they have record low temperatures. So much for global warming. La Soufrière, the volcano in the island of France, had a huge blow up, sending fumes 20,000 feet in the air. The volcano just completely exploded. And then in Indonesia and the Philippines as well, we had 3 6.0 earthquakes in a span of 5 hours, which means that ring of fire is definitely getting hot. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave all your questions with the hashtag AskMarcello, and we'll see you next week.